2, 1. Hello, my name is Mark Hinton. I'm the CEO of Gigalime, which is a tech startup working in the education and public sector spaces. We're looking to use AI to change the way that decisions are made in the public sector. And today I just want to talk a bit about how data science has developed over the years with AI in targeting services. I'm going to talk about a little bit about how it's done in the B2C world, how it's done in education, and how it's done in healthcare. Look at the similarities and some of the differences between those, and then talk a bit about what the next steps are and some of the challenges and some of the dangers that we face with these things. So as an introduction, as we all know, AI is changing how services are delivered. The one-size-fits-all model still prevails in a lot of places, of course, but everybody's trying to change that and move towards a targeted approach. Targeted is a fairly generic term, and different sectors have different terminology around this stuff, and I'll talk a little bit about that. There's a long history, actually, of this. I mean, way back in the 1980s, companies were using census data coupled with market research data, so the British Market Research Bureau, a thing called ACORN, a classification of residential neighbourhoods, to classify regions of the country and understand what their spending patterns were like and how much money they had, and therefore to target products, goods, services to them. So historically, all of this has really been driven by aggregate data. So you take the census data and put it all together. You take information about health issues in the population as a whole. You look at kids and what they need to learn, and you target it at a market sector level. Increasingly now, of course, people understand that you can turn this into individual targeting. Use the data of an individual coupled with other data to target a particular product or service to them. And I think the big thing, and my message out of this, part of my message out of this, is that what this actually means is moving towards collaboration, towards joint decision making, towards students and teachers working together, patients and doctors working together, and for retailers, online retailers, for instance, to work more closely with their customers, so that the people or the machines, as we develop super AI, act as mentors rather than just imparters of knowledge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about three scenarios. Please let this work. I'm sorry, I'm having another problem here. Okay, I think I'm in charge now. So I'm going to consider 3 examples: generic B2C targeting, how education is delivered to children, and how treatment planning is done in the healthcare sector. So in B2C targeting, their terminology is where they originally talked about personalization. And personalization is really targeting to. I'm sorry, my screen is just not behaving. Right, sorry. And targeting to a particular customer segment. So that's based upon population statistics and doing clustering of people's behavior and their spending patterns. And it's largely a big linear regression process. And what people, of course, now are doing, they're moving to what they call individualization, which is targeting to behavior. So it's still a statistical model, but there's so much data in this, and you're looking at so many complex things, not just numbers. You're looking at people's browsing history and all their click-throughs and everything. And it takes machine learning. It takes a field of data science that is much more sophisticated than the traditional statistics models and able to deal with much larger amounts of data. And we're beginning to see that come in. Whether this actually leads to collaboration in this area is a little uncertain to me. Who are the mentors in this case giving feedback and having a communication with the customer? Well, chatbots are getting increasingly intelligent. There's always online support. You may have an online support real person sometimes. And of course, they get customer feedback. But it's not necessarily a dialogue yet as you might have with a with a person in a shop. Education is somewhat different. So they use different terms. They have individualization, differentiation, personalization. So then the teaching tends to be classified into 4 types, as you can see in the table here. So in the traditional model, there are goals for students, methods by which they're going to achieve those goals, and a speed at which they're going to do it. But in traditional teaching, teacher at the front of the class, that's the same for all of the kids in the class. Individualization has come in to some extent, whereby the first 2 things are still the same for everybody, but they can go at different speeds because they do some of the work on their own. They have online resources, they workbooks, they can travel at different speeds in different subjects. That's good, but actually teachers wanted it to be even better, and we now talk about differentiation, where we still have the same goals, we're still following the same curriculum, but we can use different methods. Some kids are good audio visually, some kids are good at reading, some kids really need the teacher standing at the front of the class with the whiteboard. But they can have the different methods and they can go at different speeds. The view now, and it's really been pushed a bit by COVID-19, particularly in developing countries, is to make that personalization where all of these things are different for each child, and the teacher needs data and technology to be able to do that. And it's just starting to happen slowly, but in that model, again, it's a communication, a collaboration between the teacher and the child, and it's the technology they need so that they enable them to do that. Healthcare is a different kind of thing. We talked about personalized medicine in healthcare for a long time. The term is going out of fashion, thankfully, because it kind of gave people the impression that they were going to have treatments and preventions developed specifically for them, unique to them. That may happen one day with genetic treatments, with stem cell therapies, which are all still very much at an experimental stage. But at the moment, what actually happens is what's now called precision medicine, in which the focus is on identifying what this person will best benefit from. So that takes into account their genetics to some extent, certainly their environment, lifestyle factors, and their medical history. It's still really like differentiation in education. It's a complex segmentation of people, but essentially it's still a decision tree running through that says, okay, this is the best thing we can do for you. Personalization in healthcare could be defined as collaboration, giving all the information to a patient and then jointly planning the best treatment pathway for them. Collaboration is the key. So I think we can see that there are jargon variations in different areas. We talk about things being personal, being individual, being differentiated, being precise. But actually, they're kind of all moving in the same direction. They're moving from one size fits all to targeted offers. Initially with population clusters, then getting into individual recommendations with more data, and finally being able to make collaborative decisions. So what I'm really saying is that for me, personalization equals collaboration, in which experts are mentors rather than sources of knowledge or prescribers of products or services or medicines. So what does that actually look like? So there's a whole bunch of stuff goes on. I mean, everybody is always collecting data. We collect data from people's behavior, from their education records, from their electronic patient records. We blind that data to say, we de-identify it generally for data protection purposes. And we end up with a load of blinded individual data, which we aggregate. We add metadata. So we get data from the regulatory side. So for instance, we get NICE guidelines in healthcare. That's the National Institute of Clinical Excellence. We get the curriculum from schools, from the central government. We get market research data. We do surveys of people. In medicine, we have clinical trials and results of those clinical trials. And there's always academic research being published to add into our aggregated data with metadata. And really, where mostly we are now is we mostly go down the right-hand side and we do statistical analysis and clustering of that. We go through a set of decision trees effectively. I mean, all sorts of clever technology in there, but that's effectively what it is. And out of that comes individualized or differentiated offers or decisions. But with data science today and with machine learning and all the big data capabilities, we can take the aggregated data, but we can also take the blinded individual data into a bigger data set. And out of that, we can get truly personalized offers. Within that, there's collaboration, there's a conversation with the person, and there's a bi-directional decision. So we've gone down the right-hand side, and we're pretty good at that now, I think in most areas. And the left-hand side is exciting and being explored as we speak. And certainly at Gigalime, we're looking at how we do this with education. But all of this, as we know with AI, there are moral questions coming up as we address these questions, and we get better and better at doing this targeting. So there's questions around personal rights and freedoms. We have GDPR now. We also have HIPAA to protect health data of individuals. But do they perhaps need to be updated for AI? GDPR is 2 years old, isn't it? It's just past 2 years. I suspect it may already need to be looked at for how our personal data in such a large scale is really dealt with. Can we really be forgotten? We have the right to be forgotten, but the data is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And all the algorithms have got my data in it. I mean, not explicitly perhaps, but it's implicitly there in the way the algorithm works. So truly, if I want to be forgotten, then I'm afraid Google and Facebook could retrain their algorithms. But obviously, they're not going to do that. But so we need to think about how this is going to be dealt with and how people's rights and freedoms are protected. And we know that all this AI decision-making systems, all these systems have bias. Schools admissions, to do that with AI, that would be trained on a history of admissions, which decisions have been made by teachers, head teachers, and they have bias, whether they would like to admit it or not. Same with health insurance. How much you pay for your health insurance, or indeed if you get health insurance, is a function of data and previous decisions that AI is trained on. And will you get your health insurance or not? And you won't know why or why not. And consumer rights. Am I being fairly targeted? Is my data being used as I want it to be used? Do I have a right of appeal against any of these decisions that the AI systems are going to make going forward? These are questions that are important for the technology people as well as governments and as well as philosophers and people who study human rights. So there are questions, I think, to answer in all of this before it's too late. And then we need to ask them now, even if the technology is still at least 10, 20 years away from achieving the sort of super AI that we talk about. Will AI take out the human from all of this? What would happen to human endeavor if we did that? Would we just stagnate? What's the point of learning anything or making any decisions or campaigning for anything? Because the AI is just going to sort it all out and tell us what to do. And of course, we all know the stories in science fiction, whether it's The Matrix or Terminator or iRobots, the AI always finds a loophole. It always decides actually the best thing for human beings is to put them under curfew or wipe them out or turn them into batteries or whatever it is. So do we need 3 laws of robotics equivalent for artificial intelligence? And indeed, is it possible to create such laws without some logical contradiction resulting in destruction? I mean, it sounds far-fetched, but I think we need to be talking about these questions now. Can we ensure that AI actually is deferential to humans? I think this is an interesting concept, that it doesn't make decisions based purely on logic. It creates options, creates alternatives, and defers them to humans to say which one of these are we going to do. We'll seek permission to make changes. So that's probably all I really want to say about this stuff. I think so. The takeaway for me is that, as you all know, the AI is coming. It's getting more and more sophisticated. It's moving slowly from being a large statistical number crunching capability into something which actually can have goals, work towards those goals, and understand what those goals are. It comes with big risks. It's going to be a very exciting journey, but right now I think we all need to be aware of the potential downsides and risks, and not get carried away, but also make sure we push this stuff forward in a responsible and caring way for the whole of the human race, really. And thank you very much. I think I will end there.